Okay, I'm back, and so now we want to talk about how do sedimentary rocks actually form. And so the first step is that pre-existing rocks have to be weathered. And we found that in our last lesson on weathering that there were two kinds of weathering. So you had physical weathering and chemical weathering. So in physical weathering, the identity of the rock is not changed. It just means that the rock is broken up into smaller rocks by physical weathering. On the other hand, you got chemical weathering, and so in chemical weathering, that's going to be when the rock, the minerals in the rock are chemically altered, and then that has the effect of normally loosening up the rock so it falls apart more. So here I've got the different kinds of physical weathering and chemical weathering that we mentioned in our previous video. So what I'd like for you to do is, can you identify which one's which? So all the ones that are on the top row are physical weathering, and then all the ones that are on the bottom are chemical weathering. Okay, so take a look at those. So the first one, okay, so what's that going to be an example of? So that's going to be unloading, so that the rocks are under extreme pressure when they're under the ground, but as erosion takes place that removes the rock above them, the pressure is reduced, and just like a spring, those rocks can part, and then you end up having cracks in them. Okay, the second one, okay, so what's that one going to be? So that's going to be ice wedging, and so that's when water gets into cracks, and then when it freezes, then the ice expands and it breaks the rock apart. Then when it warms up, the ice changes back into a liquid. The liquid gets down inside the cracks a little bit further, and then when it freezes again, it opens up those cracks even more. The next picture, that's going to be salt wedging. So then when water that has salt in it gets into cracks, and then the water evaporates, leaving the crystals behind. And then when more water gets into the crack and then it evaporates, then those crystals get crowded in there, and the crystals, as they form, again can enlarge those cracks. The next picture is thermal expansion. So that's going to be caused by heat. And then the very last picture is of tree roots. So as those roots get into cracks and then the roots grow, they exert forces on the cracks and they can open them up more. So there's three examples of chemical weathering underneath. So which ones are they? So the first one is going to be dissolution. So this is when you have a substance like water, which is polar, and then it has the ability to grab onto ions in the minerals that make up the rock. So when it pulls out those minerals, the ions, it's going to alter the mineral that's in there, and then that's going to loosen up the rock. Okay, so what's that second picture of? So that's going to be hydrolysis, and so that shows how a rock that has a lot of aluminum and silica in it can be turned into a clay. And then the very last picture is going to be an example of oxidation. And so in this, what's going to happen here is that a rock that has a lot of iron in it, that iron can be rusted. So all of these are different ways of weathering a rock. Okay, so now that we've got our smaller pieces of the original rock, or it could be altered pieces of the original rock, what's going to happen to them? Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is going to be erosion, which we're going to talk about in our next segment.